All right, let's dive into this one. It's going to be a big one. We're tackling Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens today.
Yeah.
You sent this book over, and wow, it's really got me thinking. It's not just like a regular history book, you know?
No, not at all.
It's more like, I don't know, it's like a deep dive into like human nature, the whole shebang, you know?
It really makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about, well, about being human.
Exactly.
Where we came from, where we're going, all of that. Harari's got a way of just flipping your perspective on its head.
Yeah, totally. So, like, one of the first things that really jumped out at me was how Sapiens starts. It doesn't start with, like, empires and kings and all that stuff. It goes way back, right?
Yep.
Like 70,000 years ago. Back when Homo sapiens was just, like, another animal trying to survive. No iPhones, no social media, just trying not to get eaten by a lion.
Yeah, just another species trying to make it in a pretty brutal world.
Yeah,
And what's fascinating is how quickly things changed after that.
right.
Harari calls it the cognitive revolution.
Okay, the cognitive revolution. So what was that about? Was it like we all just suddenly got smarter?
Well, it wasn't just about like brain size or raw intelligence. It was more about
Yeah.
developing the ability for things like language
Okay.
and symbolic thought, like being able to use symbols to represent things, to communicate ideas.
Right, right. Because other animals can communicate in their own ways, but we took it to a whole other level.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really interesting because Harari argues that one of the most important things that came out of the cognitive revolution was our ability to believe in things that don't physically exist.
What, like believing in ghosts?
Well, sort of. He calls them imagined realities.
Oh, yeah, I remember that from the book, Imagined Realities.
Like, think about gods, nations, money, corporations.
Okay.
They don't actually exist in the physical world, right? Like, you can't touch them or see them in the same way you can see a tree or a rock.
Right, but they're real to us because we agree they're real,
Right.
right?
Exactly. And that's the key. Our ability to collectively believe in these shared fictions, these imagined realities, it's what allowed us to cooperate in huge numbers, to build complex societies, and ultimately to become the dominant species on planet Earth.
So wait, so you're saying that our success as a species is basically down to our ability to believe in things that aren't actually real?
It's a bit of a mind-blowing concept, isn't it?
It is, kind of. So, like, money is just paper, right?
Right.
But we all agree it has value, so it does.
Exactly. And nations are just lines drawn on a map.
Yeah.
But people are willing to fight and die for those lines because they believe in the idea of the nation. It's powerful stuff.
So it's like we've created this whole layer of meaning on top of the physical world.
Precisely.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. But how did this, like, ability to believe in stuff that isn't real, how did that actually lead to, us taking over the world?
Well, think about the agricultural revolution. Like, we went from hunting and gathering to settling down and farming. And Harari makes this really provocative argument.
Yeah.
He calls it history's biggest fraud.
Hold on, history's biggest fraud.
Yep. He says it led to longer working hours,
Really?
increased social hierarchy,
Okay.
and even, the misery of domesticated animals.
Whoa. Okay, I got to hear more about this. Agriculture is a fraud. That's a pretty bold statement. I mean,
Yeah.
we need food to survive, right?
Of course. And Harari acknowledges the benefits. Like, agriculture allowed for larger settlements, food surpluses.
Okay, yeah.
It was definitely a turning point. But he challenges the idea that it was this purely positive development for humanity. Like, he argues that it kind of trapped us in a cycle of endless toil, tied us to a particular piece of land, and ultimately, made us more vulnerable to things like famine and disease when harvests failed.
I hadn't thought about it that way. So we traded the freedom of hunter-gatherer life for the security, but also the constraints of agriculture.
Exactly.
And that set the stage for all these complex societies we live in today.
Right. Because as societies grew larger and more complex, you needed new ways to organize them, to maintain order, to get people to cooperate on a larger scale.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And that's where those imagined realities, those shared myths.
Like laws, religions, political systems.
Exactly. They became even more important.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how those shared stories played a crucial role in our development. But if they're just stories we tell ourselves, couldn't they also be used to, like, manipulate people?
Oh, absolutely. And throughout history, you see that happening time and time again. Like, those in power have used these shared narratives to legitimize their rule, to justify war and conquest,
Right.
to maintain social hierarchies. Think about things like the divine right of kings, the concept of manifest destiny, even modern-day propaganda.
Okay, so the same forces that allowed us to build civilizations could also be used for, well, for bad things.
That's the paradox of our species, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
We have this incredible capacity for cooperation and innovation, but also for violence and destruction.
Right. And Sapiens really makes you think about that duality.
It does.
So we've covered the cognitive revolution, the agricultural revolution, and this idea that our ability to believe in shared fictions has shaped our history in all these profound ways.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
Well, from here, Harari takes us on this incredible journey through, the rise and fall of empires,
Yeah.
the development of writing and money,
Right.
and ultimately to the emergence of the scientific revolution, which is really where things start to get, I don't know, even more mind-blowing.
Okay, we're going to have to save that for next time.
We are.
But before we move on, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So you're saying that, like, our entire world, with all its complexities, all the things we take for granted,
Yeah.
it's essentially built on a foundation of shared stories.
Think about it. Our economic systems, our political systems, our legal systems, even our social norms.
Yeah.
They all rely on a shared understanding of how things work.
Okay.
Even if those understandings are ultimately based on, well, beliefs rather than some objective reality.
It's like a shared operating system that we all run on, but we don't even realize it's there.
A perfect analogy.
And like any operating system, it
Yeah.
can be hacked, it can be corrupted, it can even crash.
Exactly. And that's where things start to get really interesting because these stories we tell ourselves about the world,
Yeah.
they're not static. They evolve over time. Think about how our understanding of concepts like freedom, equality, justice
Yeah.
have changed over the centuries.
You're right. Those ideas have been redefined, reinterpreted. It's like we're constantly updating the software, right?
Precisely.
So if we can change the stories, does that mean we can change the world?
Now, that is the big question, isn't it?
It is.
And it leads us perfectly into the scientific revolution.
Okay, so let's talk about that next time.
Let's do it.
Right.
Because the scientific revolution, it wasn't just about like new discoveries and inventions,
Yep.
It was this fundamental shift in how we think about knowledge itself.
Okay, so how so? What do you mean by that?
Well, Harari talks about this idea of the discovery of ignorance.
The discovery of ignorance.
Yeah, like before the scientific revolution, most people thought they had, most of the answers figured out
Right.
based on like tradition, religious dogma, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then science comes along and it's like, hold on, we actually don't know everything. Like there's a whole lot we don't know.
Right, yeah.
And that shift in mindset, that embrace of ignorance in a way, it blew everything wide open.
Okay, that's really interesting. So instead of relying on, like you said, tradition or authority figures,
Yeah.
we started looking to observation, experimentation, evidence
Exactly.
to figure things out.
To try to understand the world around us. And that led to all these incredible breakthroughs, obviously, like our understanding of physics, biology, medicine, astronomy, you name it.
Totally. Science is amazing.
Yeah.
But I can also see how it would have been pretty, like, disruptive at the time.
Yeah.
Challenging long-held beliefs, questioning authority.
For sure. Think about Galileo.
Yeah.
He's saying, hey, the earth revolves around the sun.
Right, yeah.
And the church is like, no way, that goes against everything we believe. And it wasn't just a scientific debate, right?
Oh.
It was this like power struggle over who gets to decide what's true.
Okay, so the scientific revolution wasn't just about science. It was about challenging the power structures of the time.
In many ways, yes.
And that makes me think about today,
Mm-hmm.
Like, are we still seeing that same kind of tension?
I mean, you could definitely argue that. Like, think about the debates we have now over things like climate change
Oh, yeah.
or genetic engineering, artificial intelligence. There's this this clash between the scientific consensus and, those who might hold different beliefs.
Right.
And the stakes are really high because these are issues that could literally shape the future of humanity.
They are.
And it makes you wonder, is science still intertwined with power today?
It's a good question. Okay, so Harari walks us through all these different revolutions: cognitive, agricultural, scientific.
Yeah.
And he's basically arguing that they've all brought us to where we are today, a species that's like reshaped the planet, mastered technology.
Yeah.
We have incredible power. We live in a world of abundance.
Yeah.
But are we actually happier?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It is.
And Harari digs into this in *Sapiens*. He suggests that our happiness might actually be more about, like,
Yeah.
managing our expectations and understanding our own
Yeah.
biochemistry.
Wait, biochemistry? Like, you mean our brain chemistry?
Yeah, like he talks about how our hormones, our neurotransmitters, even our genes can play a role in how we experience emotions.
Okay.
And it's a fascinating idea, right? Like even if we create this perfect world,
Yeah.
no poverty, no disease, no war,
Yeah.
we might still be unhappy if our brains aren't wired for it.
Wow. Okay, that's a bit of a downer, but I guess it makes sense. It's
Yeah.
just like we have to work on ourselves from the inside out, as well as changing the world around us.
That's a good way to put it. It's about finding that balance.
Right.
And then, *Sapiens* takes us even further down the rabbit hole.
Oh, yeah.
It starts talking about all these futuristic possibilities like genetic engineering, artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
the idea that we could potentially transcend our biological limits.
So we're talking like sci-fi stuff now.
Kind of, yeah. Like Harari asks us to imagine a future where we could engineer our desires, extend our lifespans indefinitely, maybe even merge with technology.
Whoa. Okay, now that's some mind-blowing stuff. So like we've gone from being these humble hunter-gatherers to potentially becoming,
Gods.
yeah, almost like gods. It's a lot to process.
It is. And it really highlights how far we've come, but also how much responsibility we have now.
Totally. So where do we go from here?
Well, that's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive into *Sapiens*. We'll tackle these big questions about the future of humanity and what it means to be human in an age of unprecedented technological power.
I mean, it's kind of exciting to think about all these possibilities the technology's opening up,
Yeah.
but also kind of scary, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Like it's that classic double-edged sword.
Totally. Like, what are the downsides? What are we not thinking about?
Exactly. And *Sapiens* really makes you think about those unintended consequences. Like we've always tried to control our environment,
Right.
control other species. And now it's like we're talking about controlling our own evolution.
Yeah, it's like this constant drive for control.
It is. And Harari argues that it's like built into us. Like it's part of what makes us human.
Okay.
And it's what's allowed us to achieve all these incredible things. But it's also led to, well, a lot of suffering.
Right. Yeah. Wars, environmental destruction.
Yeah.
So what's the solution? Do we just like give up on control? Just let nature take its course?
I don't think that's what Harari is saying. He's not saying we should go back to living in caves or anything.
Right.
It's more about, I think, being aware of that drive for control
Yeah.
and being more responsible with the power that we have.
Okay. But that's easier said than done, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are huge, complex issues. Like, where do we even begin?
Well, I think it starts with, recognizing that the future isn't set in stone.
Okay.
It's not inevitable. It's something that we're creating through our choices, our actions, even our beliefs.
So you're saying we have agency, like we're not just along for the race.
Exactly. But that agency comes with, a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
So if we want to create a good future, a future that works for everyone,
Yeah.
what do we need to do?
I think we need to start asking some hard questions.
Give me some examples.
Well, like, what does it even mean to live a good life in this day and age?
Yeah.
With all the technology and abundance that we have,
Right, yeah.
what are the ethical limits of, like, manipulating human biology or artificial intelligence?
Right.
How do we balance individual freedom with the need to act collectively to address these global challenges?
Wow. Okay, those are some big questions. I don't know if I have the answers.
And I don't think anyone does.
Yeah.
But that's what makes *Sapiens* such an important book, I think.
Totally.
It doesn't give us all the answers, but it makes us think about the right questions.
It does. It really does. I started this deep dive thinking I was just going to learn about history,
Yeah.
but what's really resonated with me is this sense of, possibility. The idea that we have the power to shape our own future. It's a little daunting, but also kind of exciting,
It is, and I think that's what Harari's trying to do with *Sapiens*. He's saying, hey, we're at this crossroads. We have all this incredible potential, but also all this responsibility.
Right.
So let's be thoughtful about the choices we make because they're going to determine what happens next.
Exactly.
Well, that's a great note to end on. Listeners, if you've enjoyed this deep dive into Sapiens, I highly, highly recommend picking up the book and exploring these ideas for yourselves. It might just change how you see the world. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.